Round of applause for Ariel. Isn't she fantastic? She's just telling it like it is. She is telling it like it is, talking about this nominee, Donald Trump, a nominee unlike we've seen probably ever. Somebody who's claiming to be a big success, but who has a track record of stepping all over small people, and that's how he defines success, just like he defines smart as not paying taxes to support our troops and our vets and our teachers. And that's what's at stake. I'll tell you, it's great to be back in Philadelphia. You guys ran one heck of a convention. Thank you so much. Hillary, that was the best week of the entire campaign with the possible exception of maybe last week. Wasn't Hillary fantastic in her debate? I'll get to me in a second. Hillary's debate last Monday was just so wonderful. She did such a great job, and then it turned out to be the gift that kept on giving, because Donald walked off the stage so mad that he lost that he just kind of, his fingers couldn't stay off the tweet button, you know, and it kept going down and down and down. And so I think she's in a pretty good spot going into the debate Sunday with Donald Trump. And here we are 34 days away. Well, let me do some thank yous, and then I want to talk about my debate last night, which I had a blast at, and some of the issues that we raised and we talked about, and then I'm going to close with how we win this thing. But let me do some thank yous first. I definitely thank Ariel for sharing her story. So many people have stories like that of trusting Trump and then getting tricked by Trump, businesses that did that work with him and then found that they got stiffed or sued or strong-armed. And I'm glad Ariel came and shared that with us. We've got two great members of Congress who talked to you. Thank you very much, Brendan Boyle and Bob Brady. Give them a big round of applause. And then we're in the House of Labor here with the sheet metal workers, Local 19. Very, very good. Very, very good. And not only sheet metal workers, but I know we got Rick Bloomingdale, who is the head of the state AFL-CIO, with us. Give all of labor applause. I'm lucky that I have some special folks with me here, where my mom and dad are right here. My mom and dad are Al and Kathy Kaine. They're from Kansas City. They are the best parents anybody could ever have. And my dad ran an ironworker organized welding and ironworking shop in the stockyards of Kansas City. And my mom and my brothers and me grew up working in that business with my dad and his employees. And I learned from my father about the dignity of crafts and trades like welders and iron workers, and I learned about the partnership between owners and workers, management and labor. It doesn't have to be a fight. It doesn't have to be an adversarial relationship. We work better in life when we work as a team. Stronger together, right? Stronger together. And si se puede, si se puede. And after the debate, I said, "Hey, Mom and Dad, why don't you travel with me? I got a plane with my name on it now. I've never had that before in my life. So at least for the next couple of weeks, the name's still going to be on it." So anyway, we're having fun traveling together. Just great friends from labor here, and it's just good to be back with 34 days left. We're in the midst of making history, folks. Do you feel it? You feel it in the air? All elections are great. I mean, I was a missionary in Honduras. It was a military dictatorship, so you couldn't vote for your leaders, and people I knew prayed for the day when one day they could pick the leaders of their country. And I came back from that 35 years ago really, wow, I take this for granted. I shouldn't take it for granted. I should be serious about it. So working on any election, city council, any election is so important. But when you're working on an election that will make history, you just have to stop and savor that a little bit. And we're in a history-making time right now, in exactly the kind of history We can do. We can make exactly the kind of history that is our story, that's been the story of our country since Philadelphia and Jamestown and, the earliest days of our country. We set out this vision for ourselves. And even people who couldn't live that way were smart enough to say equality will be our North Star. All are created equal. And Thomas Jefferson, he wasn't living that way. No one was living that way. When they said it, no one was living that way, but there was a spark in their brain that made them say that will be the North Star that we will pursue. And our whole history is about this. It's about waking up one day and saying, wait, we said this about ourselves. We promised equality would be our goal, but how can we justify slavery? And so the pain and a war and rewriting the Constitution, and then 60 or 70 years later, we've said this about ourselves, equality, but how can we justify women can't vote? And then in the 1960s, how can we justify voting restrictions that keep African Americans and other minorities away from the poll? And then this generation struggles. How can we justify that LGBT people aren't treated equally like everybody else, right? And so now a major party, for the first time in our history, 96 years after women get the right to vote, has nominated a woman to be president, a strong, courageous woman. And we're on the verge, if we do what we know to do, of making history. So that's just to say it's an exciting time to be doing what we're doing. I'm so proud to be on this ticket with Hillary. I talked about another really important woman at the debate last night. The debate was in Farmville, Virginia, which is a rural southern community, Prince Edward County, Virginia. And I talked about a beautiful woman, young woman, 16-year-old kid, 1951, named Barbara Johns. And I just told the story. I'm just going to tell you to it quick because it's this story of us going ahead and it connects to Hillary. Barbara's 16 years old, and she was going to a segregated school, Moton High School in Farmville, Virginia. And one day, she and her friends just decided, we don't want to go to a second-class school. We live in a land that says equality is the principle. We don't want to do this. It was 1951. She's 16 years old. Well, they waited till the principal went downtown. They actually faked a call and made him leave to go downtown. And then Barbara called everybody into the auditorium and said, let's have a meeting here. Let's walk out of our high school. Let's walk out of our high school and just say, just let us go to the nicer school that's a few blocks away where all the white kids can go. And they let a walkout. And then they called the civil rights lawyer. This is 1951. A bunch of kids, their parents are telling them not to do it. Their teachers are telling them not to do it. They call a civil rights lawyer and they say, we want to bring a lawsuit, and they do. And that suit, 175 of the kids signed on as plaintiffs. That suit became Brown versus Board of Education. And it led to equality for everybody in our schools. And it was tough. And it was very, very tough. Barbara ended up having to move away from Farmville because of threats against her family. When I was governor of Virginia, we did a civil rights memorial on our Capitol Square, a beautiful sculpture of Barbara Johns and her colleagues walking out of school that day that we unveiled when I was governor. But I stood on the stage last night in Farmville. I said, we're standing in a special place, this place where Barbara Johns showed that even a 16-year-old girl in a time of segregation, everybody can stand up and be a leader. Barbara Johns believed in our values. She believed that we're stronger together. And then I said, and I'm happy to be on a ticket with a courageous history-making woman who believes that we're stronger together, and that's Hillary Clinton. And that's Hillary Clinton. The debate was a little feisty. I mean, I got to admit, I am Irish. There were a couple of important things about the debate. First, my opponent, Mike Pence, who's a pretty good debater, he came in really wanting to lay some gloves on Hillary Clinton and didn't get to do anything. Yeah. I've never played hockey, but I think I'd be a good goalie based on last night. Nothing was going in the net last night. And then the second thing was my opponent, Mike Pence. Again, he is a pretty good debater. He's pretty smooth. But there is one thing he can't do, and that is defend Donald Trump on anything, And so, again and again during the debate, I would say something that Trump said. I said, I can't believe that Governor Pence will defend that, and he wouldn't defend it. And so we went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, a bunch of times when I put that out there, and each time he thought about it and said, I'd rather talk about something else. And then about 2/3 of the way through the debate, I said, well, look, let me just point out what's happening here. You are Donald Trump's running mate, and I'm putting these things down on the table, and I'm asking you to defend him, and you won't defend him. If you can't defend your own running mate, how can you ask one person to vote for your running mate? One person. I mean, your running mate ought to be able to defend you. Your running mate ought to have something nice to say about you. And so for me, that was, I got dinged a little bit, even by my wife, for like interrupting too much. Okay. But the key part of that debate was, at some points I felt like both me and Mike Pence were debating Donald Trump. I was going after Donald Trump, and Mike Pence kind of was going after Trump with me. And I can't imagine that made the Donald too happy. So there may have been some interesting conversations about that today on the other side of the aisle. But, we weren't just there to debate. It's not just sitting around trading words. We were talking about pretty important issues. Some of the things I was challenging them about are issues that are really at the heart of the campaign. So just to go over a couple of them, we talked about the need to do immigration reform, comprehensive immigration reform. Really need to do it. And I laid out this plan that Hillary and I have that I've worked on as a senator to do it in a comprehensive way, really to look at all of the immigration reform issues and do it comprehensively. To have a path for citizenship for people who are here, who are working hard, paying taxes, living by the rules, but also to have better border security. We can do both. To put as our top value that we don't separate families, that we keep families together. That's so important, and we ought to put that as our top value. And I challenged, and on that one, I challenged the other guys. I said, now Donald Trump's plan is that we would become a deportation nation and have a deportation force that would go house to house, school to school, neighborhood to neighborhood to deport 16 million people. And of course, when I said that, the deportation force thing, well, Governor Pence said, oh, Donald Trump never said that. Well, they went to the tape, folks. They went to the tape. Because if Donald Trump is anything, he is like a human highlight reel. And there's a lot of it on tape. And so they played it this morning. Donald Trump again and again, we got to have a deportation force. And this is a fundamental choice. Do we want to be a nation of laws and a nation of immigrants that has a solid immigration policy, or do we want to be known as deportation nation? I think that's a clear choice, and Hillary and I have the right side of it. And no matter how much they fuzz it up, Donald Trump's a pretty scary guy when you get to this. We talked about criminal justice reform. Now, this is a very tough, challenging, and very, very important issue. I was a mayor of Richmond with the police force, worked closely with my police force, and when I got elected as a city councilman, we had one of the highest homicide rates in the United States. And we brought it down dramatically, cut it in half over 8 years, by building what we call community policing, where the neighborhoods and the police respected each other and worked well together, and we trained everybody on how to do it. And the great thing about community policing is by narrowing the gap between neighborhoods and the police, you actually reduce danger for people and for police. When the gap is wide between neighborhoods and police, it's dangerous for people like a Philando Castile. He's the person that I think about the most, this poor, beautiful young guy in Minneapolis who was killed. And of all of these shootings, they're all horrible, but I don't know, this one really grabbed me. This guy in Minneapolis, maybe it grabbed me because he is working in a school in Minneapolis, and one of my kids works in the Rec and Parks department in Minneapolis. Philando Castile got a job as a janitor, and then he worked his way up to become a janitor supervisor. And I bet everybody, if you think about elementary school, you will think there was a janitor or a health worker or a nurse that like you loved even more than your teachers, who was like really, or a bus driver that was really good to kids. And Philando Castile was this kind of a guy. He was a big guy. He had dreadlocks. They called him Mr. Rogers with dreadlocks. He was so friendly. Well, Philando Castile was killed by the police in a Minneapolis suburb a number of months back. And when they went into the story, what they found was this Mr. Rogers with dreadlocks had been stopped by the police 50 times over the course of the previous years. And he'd never done anything wrong. He was going to work. He was helping kids. He was paying taxes. He was a great citizen. But he'd been stopped 50 times. And so I talked about him and about the fact that we've got to grapple with these kinds of challenges and talk about biases and gaps in our system and how we can respect each other more. And, Governor Pence said, well, why do we always have to bring up institutional bias? Why do we have to bring up bias issues at all? And I said, we have to because of a guy like Philando Castile. We've got to. And if you're not able to talk about something, how do you ever solve that thing? If you can't sit down and be honest about challenges, how do you ever improve and get better? And so that was an issue that we talked about, two very different approaches: community policing, or a Donald Trump who says what we need is nationwide stop and frisk, or to expand stop and frisk policies. So these are important. These are important issues. We talked about women's health. We had a good exchange, I think. We had a good exchange about women's reproductive rights. And it was a good exchange because it was probably the one part of the debate where we were not really being feisty and going back and forth, but we were really just kind of sharing who we were and our own even religious feelings about tough issues like reproduction and abortion and how to do the right thing. But the point that I made is, okay, well, you guys have points of view, but you want to mandate them on everybody. Donald Trump famously has said that, there's got to be a punishment for a woman having an abortion. And Mike Pence says we got to repeal Roe versus Wade. Now, some of you are too young. Some of you are too young to remember Roe versus Wade, 1973. So we've got some young folks here. What was it like before Roe versus Wade? I'll tell you. Before Roe versus Wade, states would pass criminal laws making it a crime for which you could be prosecuted and jailed if you made the choice to terminate a pregnancy. Again, you can have all the moral discussion you want, but use the criminal law as a bludgeon to prosecute and even jail people for making their own decisions. Well, that's what Donald Trump and Mike Pence want to go back to. They want to go back to that. And the point I made was, look, we can have all the moral discussions we want to, and that's good. It's good to have discussions about hard issues. Of course it is, but you know what? At the end of the day, we've just got to trust women, trust people to make their own decisions on moral issues. We can trust American women. We can trust all women. And the notion of a big government deciding, no, we're not going to let you make the decision. We're making the decision for you, especially a Congress that's 81% male. Why would we want an 19% female is the best we've ever been in this country. We're 75th in the world. We're below the global average. So this is an important topic that even in the back and forth, we expose the differences in the tickets. And the last thing I want to talk about is the economy and taxes before I get to, okay, how are we going to win this thing? Now, this is a big difference, economy and taxes. Hillary and I have an economic plan, and here's what it is. We're going to invest in manufacturing, research for the new energy jobs of tomorrow, and infrastructure. Because if you're investing in manufacturing and you're investing in infrastructure, you're hiring people today, and then you raise the platform for success for 40 or 50 years. So that's number one. Number two, we're going to invest in our workers, and starting at pre-K. From pre-K to celebrating great teachers, to debt-free college, to career and technical programs and union apprenticeship programs, we're going to invest. Because the more skills your workforce has, the better off not only individuals will do, but society too. Third, we're going to be about fairness. Minimum wage should be raised to a level where if you work full-time at minimum wage, you won't be under the poverty level. I mean, that's pretty basic. That's pretty basic. Equal pay for women. What a radical concept. I mean, that's pretty basic. So that's pillar 3. Pillar 4 is let's focus on small businesses. Just like, Ariel talked about the small businesses in Atlantic City. 65% of jobs in this country come out of small businesses. My dad's business was a small business. Hillary Clinton's dad had a small drapery business. That's where jobs get started, and then small businesses get bigger and hire more people. And so we're going to focus on small business success. And then finally, on the tax code, we have said if you're at $250,000 or below, no increase in taxes. In fact, you'll get targeted tax relief for child care and paid sick leave, and we will target tax relief to small businesses. But to pay for the educational investments, we're also going to ask the individuals who are the wealthiest and the businesses that have done this the best, especially as we've come out of this recession. A small group have done really, really well. We're going to ask them to pay more so we can make those investments to create an economy that works for everybody. And if we do, it'll be better for everybody, even those who are paying more at the top end. That's what we want to do. That's what we want to do. But we got into a back and forth about this because the Trump-Pence economic plan is very, very different. It's got 2 components. The first one, Donald Trump says wages are too high. Wages are too high, he says. And Donald Trump thinks we ought to get rid of the federal minimum wage. And when Mike Pence was in Congress, he voted against raising the minimum wage above $5.15. And now as governor of Indiana, he's fought very, very hard against minimum wage, even passing laws so that if a city, say a city in Indiana, they elect a city council and a mayor, and they decide, we're going to be responsive to our voters, we're going to raise the minimum wage in our city. No, the state has now cracked down and said, you can't even do that if your voters want you to do. So low wages is their thing. That's number one. And second, the other thing is on taxes, to give massive tax breaks to people at the very, very tip top. Trillions of dollars of tax cuts to people at the top. Analyses of the plan say about 8 million middle-class families would get tax increases under the Trump proposal. Hillary Clinton challenged Donald Trump about this on the stage last week, and he just kind of waved his arms kind of like abracadabra. He said, look, if you give those tax cuts, see, all these jobs will be created by those at the top that you give the tax cuts to. And again, it was just kind of like this. But the problem is Trump's wrong, because that's exactly what Congress did when Mike Pence was in Congress and George Bush was president. They gave tax cuts to people at the very top, and it didn't create a lot of magic. It put America's economy into the worst recession since the 1930s. I mean, I remember those days. I got a feeling you remember those days. And trying to tell me that you do the same thing now and it's going to work out well, we got a saying down in Virginia. I don't know if you've ever heard it. I may have been born at night, but I wasn't born last night. Yeah, I wasn't born last night. Don't tell me about that. I remember what happened the last time we tried this thing. And so that is the difference, a huge difference in an economic plan. That's why groups that look at the economic plan say, if you do what Hillary Clinton says, in 4 years you're going to have 10.5 million new jobs in this country. If you do what Donald Trump says, in 4 years you're going to lose 3.4 million jobs. So what's the difference between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump? It's 14 million jobs. And I tell people that's the difference between a you're hired president and a you're fired president. Why would we want to have a you're fired president? And one more thing before I get on to how we're going to win this thing, because we're on the subject of taxes. Now, let's talk about Donald Trump's taxes. Yeah, what taxes? What? I need a speechwriter. Yeah, what taxes? What taxes? This is a really important issue because it's about taxes. but it's even a more important issue because it's about character. So step one, every president since Richard Nixon, including Richard Nixon, that paragon of ethics, has released their tax returns to the American public. And it was actually interesting, the way Nixon did it. He didn't do it during the campaign, but at some point Nixon was being audited when he was president. And when that news got out, he goes, I'm being audited, so you might have some suspicions about me. I'm going to release my tax returns because I'm being audited to show the American public that I'm not a crook. That's what President Nixon said. So that started a tradition. After President Nixon did, every major party candidate, upon getting the nomination, has released their tax returns. That's step one. Step two, Donald Trump, 2014, he's thinking about running for president. He gets asked, if you run for president, will you release your tax returns? He says, absolutely. No ifs, no ands, no buts, no, well, if the other person does this or that, or if I'm not under, no, he's absolutely, I'm going to release him. First promise he made in the campaign, first promise he broke. Third, okay, now we're in the campaign. He's breaking his promise. He's not releasing his tax returns. He says it was because he's being audited. That has nothing to do with it. In fact, if you're being audited, maybe there's more of a reason we should see your tax returns, okay? But then we get to the heart of the matter. What's he hiding? Why won't he release his tax returns? Is it maybe he's not so wealthy, or maybe he's not so charitable, or maybe he's doing business with people that would scare the daylights out of a lot of people, or maybe that it's not paying taxes. He's not paying, or all of the above, or all of the above. So did you see what happened during the debate with Hillary last week? Hillary was going after him. I bet it's going to show that you're not so rich, you're not so charitable. And he didn't respond to those things. But when she said, I bet it's going to show that you don't pay taxes, he got a smirk on his face. And he said, that just shows I'm smart. That just shows I'm smart. So I guess you're smart for not paying taxes, but those of us who pay taxes to support teachers, those of us who pay taxes to support veterans, those of us who pay taxes to support our troops, what's he saying about us? He's saying that we're stupid. He's saying that we're suckers. He's saying that we're chumps and that he's smart. Well, I got a lot of words for him, and smart ain't one of them. And I'm not even going to get into the words that I'm thinking about right now. I got a boy in the military who's deployed overseas right now. And when I see a guy stand on stage and smirk about how I don't have to pay taxes, that just shows I'm smart, it makes me very, very angry. And can I just extend it to two more points on this? Let's talk about him not paying taxes and where he lived and when he didn't pay them. The New York Times now came out with the story that he took a $1 billion loss in 1995 that would probably mean he wouldn't have to pay taxes for 18 years. Now, he said that's because he's brilliant and that he's a genius, that he lost $1 billion. I guess it takes a lot of genius to lose $1 billion, and I guess this is just the kind of genius that we want running the entire American economy? You got to be kidding me. But he said, okay, you know, the story came out and he didn't deny it. 18 years of not paying taxes. So one of those years was 2001, 9/11. Let me just focus on that year in particular and a couple years after. Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump's hometown, New York City, was attacked by terrorists on 9/11, the worst terrorist attack in the history of this country, in New York City and in Virginia, the Pentagon, and the plane that went down here in Pennsylvania. What happened after that attack? Well, first, thousands of young men and women, they went down to recruiting offices and they signed up to our volunteer military to fight terrorism. That happened. And second, Hillary Clinton, who's a U.S. senator at the time from New York, she goes to the World Trade Center within 24 hours where they're still looking for survivors and looking for bodies. And then she goes back down to Washington and she fights to get funds to rebuild New York. And then she fights to get funds to provide health care for the first responders who rushed into the World Trade Center, police and fire in New York City, and in the Pentagon in Virginia. She worked with Democrats and Republicans to do that. And then as Secretary of State, she worked with President Obama's national security team to make sure that they revived the hunt for bin Laden and found him and wiped him off the face of the earth. So that's what Hillary Clinton did when her hometown was attacked in New York City on 9/11. And so what did Donald Trump do when his hometown, New York City, was attacked on 9/11? Those were the years that he was being smart and not paying taxes, not paying for the fight against terrorism, not paying for the funds to rebuild New York City, not paying for the funds for first responder health care, not paying for the salaries of the men and women who signed up to fight terrorism after 9/11. And he's saying he's smart. He's saying he's smart. I asked this to Governor Pence last night. I said, hey, I know you had to give your tax returns to Donald Trump to show you were qualified to be vice president. And the answer to that was he did. He didn't dispute it. We knew that was true. It had already been reported. So if you have to reveal your tax returns to show that you are qualified to be vice president, then how in the world can you claim that you do not owe the American public your tax returns if you want to be president? It would be like me coming to you for a summer job. Young man, have you ever worked before? Yes. Can you give me references? I'm sorry, I just can't give that to you. Well, you just graduated from college. You're trying to get a job. Can I see your grades and your transcript? No, I'm sorry. I'm not going to give this to you. Running for president is a job interview, and it's only a job interview for the most important job in the world. And there's some basic questions that the voters want to know, and that the voters have a right to know, and that the voters are asking. And if you go into that job interview and you say, hey, no, I think I'm just going to take a pass on that one. I don't think I'm going to answer it. You do that with the expectation, like, maybe I can put this over on these people. That's what Donald Trump is thinking. Are we going to let him get away with that? Absolutely not. We can't. We can't. Now let's talk about how we're going to win this thing. It's close. It's close. I mean, I hear a no, it's not vote back there. I like the vote of optimism. I'm an optimistic person. But look, just 8 days ago, the polls had closed to even. And now 8 days later, it's looking pretty good. But I don't know where it's going to be 8 days from now, right? The polls have been up and the polls have been down. Pennsylvania's looked pretty good. I think you guys just, I think you guys just got in, in City of Brotherly Love convention mode and just kind of stuck with it. You kind of, even after everybody else left, you just kind of stuck with the convention spirit. And Philly and Pennsylvania has been looking good. Solid, stable, not a landslide, close but solid and stable, and that's great. But we got a lot of other states that are dead heat. We have a few. You're saying 500,000 is our margin. All right. I like the way that sounds. But let's be honest. If it was a dead heat nationally a week ago, it could be the dead heat nationally. Next week, we can't take anything for granted. I know this is exactly what Hillary would say. If she was standing right here, she would say the same thing. No matter how polls look, it's been a season of surprises. Polls have been wrong. Pundits have been wrong. So we can't take it for granted. We're living Citizens United. People can dump anything on TV, say anything they want. That can change the race. But also, I'll go back to where I started. We're trying to do something that's never been done before. If it had been easy to elect a woman president, there would have been a woman president. She's just trying to do something that's not been done. And when a Donald Trump says about Hillary, quote, she doesn't look very presidential, does she, fellas? I mean, we know what's going on with that. And so we got to assume if you're doing something that's never been done, then you got to do your best work. I am 8-0 in elections, and I'm going to be 9-0 on November 8th. I'll just tell you that. But now I got to make you nervous. I never win by much. I mean, I'm kind of barely likable enough. I mean, yeah, no, a win is a win. And what I say to young people, career advice for young people, if when you're thinking about careers, you find that you're a barely likable enough person, politics, I mean, there's not many professions where 51% is you're doing just fine. You're a winner with 51% of the people liking you and 49% of the people not liking you. No, you're a winner. You're a winner. Pick politics. But I'll tell you, the reason that I barely win my races is because Virginia's been tough. I mean, Virginia's not the bluest state in the crowd. We're better now than we used to be, but races are close because they're tough. And the way I win races is I put this thing in my head: you're the underdog till you're the winner. That's the thought. Put that thought in the back of your head. You're the underdog till you're the winner. When I told Hillary Clinton that I hoped she would run for president in April of 2014, I said, I hope you'll run for president. And she thanked me. And I said, but no matter what poll you see or what editorial or anybody say something good, you're the underdog till you're the winner, because you're trying to do something that's never been done before. Now, that's the attitude that we've got to have to pull this thing home. We're the underdog till we're the winner. And you know what? It's not just about campaigns either. That attitude, you're the underdog till you're the winner. It's not just about campaigns. I was chairman of the Democratic National Committee for a couple years, traveled all across the country, would walk into rooms in virtually every state to sit down with Democrats, and we had the super progressives and the super blue dogs, and we had labor and environmentalists, and we had students, and we had senior citizens, we had everything. And sometimes Will Rogers said, I don't believe in organized politics, that's why I'm a Democrat. Sometimes it seemed a little bit like that. But there were some unifying things in all of those rooms, and one of the ones that most unified the people that I saw we're kind of underdog people. I mean, if you think about it, we kind of got a heart for the underdog. Now, maybe there will be some research at Penn or Temple, and they'll find that that's actually like part of the human DNA, right? There may be an underdog gene, like sympathy for the underdog gene, that they'll find one day. But Democrats we're that kind of people. In my church, we would kind of say good Samaritan people, just to use, every faith tradition understands this story. There's a person who's beaten up and lying at the side of the road, and then a whole lot of people just walk on by. Even some people who are leaders, even some people who are moral leaders who should have known better. Some walk on by and pretend not to notice anything. Some notice it, but I'm not going to do anything about it. I don't know all of you. I don't know a whole lot of you, but I think I know this about you. That's not who you are. You are not walk-on-by people. We're not walk-on-by people. We're underdog people. We're the kind of people who, if we see somebody who needs a hand, even if we don't know all of the answers, even if we don't know everything that needs to be said, we're just going to kind of roll our sleeves up, and we're going to just kind of wade into the situation and see if we can figure it out, see if we can be helpful. That's what we need for the next 34 days. We're trying to make history. And I'll tell you one other thing. This being the underdog. Can I tell you that Hillary Clinton has been an underdog again and again and again throughout her life? I mean, anybody in this room been an underdog? Anybody in this room has tried to do something for the first time in your family or in your job or in your school, something that's never been done before? Anybody in this room had somebody look you in the face and say, I don't think you're going to be able to do this. This is not for you. The time isn't right for you. Sometimes the person telling you that is an enemy who doesn't want you to succeed. Sometimes it's a friend who they don't want you to get your feelings hurt or your hopes up, or they don't want you to be disappointed. And sometimes that voice is you. It's not even an enemy or a friend. It's the doubt that's in every one of us saying, maybe this isn't the right time. Maybe this isn't the right opportunity. Maybe it can't. Can I tell you that Hillary Clinton has heard that her entire life? She's heard it her entire life. And Donald Trump is only the most recent person to say this to her. But if we have that underdog attitude, where we're going to be the underdog until they tell us on the evening of November 8th, hey, guess what, underdogs? You just made history. You just elected the first woman president in the history of the United States. And now we're stronger together. We can build an economy that works for everybody, not just those at the top. We can build strength in the world with strong alliances, and we can build a community of respect where everybody's welcomed around the table, everybody's valued, and that's the history we'll make if you and we all do the work that we need to do. So, now, everybody tell me the last day to register to vote in Pennsylvania. Oh, I like this audience. I like this audience. If you are not registered, tell me where to go to vote to register. iwillvote.com. Could we have made it any easier? iwillvote.com. And if you want to do any volunteering here, first raise your hand if you're doing volunteering for the campaign already. Big round of applause for all the volunteers. But if you have not yet volunteered and you want to, all you have to do is text TOGETHER or text Philly to 47246. If you text there, you will be gathered up and you will be put to work. And then come November 8th in Pennsylvania and in Virginia and all across this country, we're going to celebrate being part of a generation that made history electing Barack Obama in 2008, made history electing Hillary Clinton in 2016. On we will go. Adelante hasta la victoria.